Good morning, good morning. Good morning. All right. Cynthia Harrison here from Rhombus Healing Arts with your Temple Time Mystic Ministry. And what else do we do here? Circling Grace. Good morning, Mercedes. Sorry, it's a bit late. I was trying to work out technical things, you know. And I saw you waiting there. I thought, should I let you in? You think I'm not coming? Alrighty. We're going to start with connection because I was just connecting before I came on, and the energy's like, whoo, are you feeling it? Are you feeling like, do you feel when you close your eyes, just close your eyes for a moment and just sort of settle. And any of you having this buzz, this like, some of you might feel it in your eyelids, right? That's when your eyelids start to flicker. Let's turn this down. When your eyelids start to flicker, it's you're shifting in your consciousness. And there's different levels of consciousness. Let me just get these screens out of the way, and I best record, hey? So the energy, I've spoken to a few people the last day or so, and having most amazing visions and whatnot. So some of you will, some of you won't. I spoke to a lady yesterday who, just a bit of a story for you, who was telling me of her vision. And I said, you realize that, well, she wouldn't have realized, but she was telling me majority of what we did in our first session in the program, like intimate things, because this woman was on my mind. And when you're on my mind, in my heart, you're in the field. And so that means I know this sounds a little, but maybe that's what we would talk about today, I'm not sure. She was there, so she experienced it even though she wasn't there. And she didn't know. So when I did speak to her, 2 weeks later, like 2 weeks after that class, she was experiencing it the night before I called her, so not yesterday, the day before. In that energy, in that subliminal stress, I call it. Let me turn this music down a little bit. I'm not ready for the music. And Facebook will probably kick me off for having music anyway. Lucky you're here on Zoom. So where was I? So just, the energy. So it's just going to give you a little story, and then we'll go into it, just to get people on board and settled. But the energy is really, look, I stopped doing energy forecasts and all that sort of stuff because it was like just every day is full on, right? it doesn't. It does not really shift much, but there are very subtle shifts, and my eyes are watering already because I was already connecting. So my eyes tend to water when I go into trance. So I was just touching into trance before I came on because I needed to do something. Anyway, so where was I? So last night, I started pulling together information for one of the books that I want to get out eventually. And it's an old program, well, old to me because, yesterday's old to me. Subliminal Stress, the Invisible Shadow. Interestingly enough, that, like, I'm like, why is that coming in now? And I could have started on more personal story, or everything I share is personal. But anyway, point is, I was up till after midnight, pulling all my resources, and I realized it was so beautiful because I realized how much information I have on that. So there is a program on that, and I'm not selling it. I'm just giving you some background. That in 2019, I went around Australia teaching subliminal stress, the invisible shadow, and there was a reason for it. I didn't know COVID was coming. I didn't know that Australia, particularly Perth, would be locked down in the way that it was. We weren't specifically individually locked down. We locked the borders of our state, which meant we were isolated from the rest of Australia and the rest of the world, because we are Perth is the most isolated city apparently on the earth, right? Or one of the most, don't quote me, I believe it's the most isolated place. So then when you close its borders to keep it safe, so basically, other than family members in other states and places getting sick and some passed, we weren't impacted by what everyone else was around 2020, 2021, 2020, right? Because we were locked down anyway. The only inconvenience was really that the rest of my family were in other places, so I didn't get to see my family for years, right? And so my grandkids and all of that. But I knew what was going on because my eldest daughter is an ICU nurse, and she was very ostracized and attacked because people were so scared of this new happening in the world, this new invisible stressor, right, in the field, that anybody who came close to it in those early days was seen to be a threat. So, I would talk to her on the phone, and she would tell me how people would spit on her if she was wearing her scrubs, on her way home or on her way to work, and they were just scared. So any other nurses out there, or doctors or medical people, hats off to you always, but particularly when things like that are happening, where just the reference of being close to somebody that is unwell. It sort of reminds me, I was very young when AIDS started. Does anyone remember? Right? And I remember in Africa where no one would help certain places in Africa, and like there's documentaries and everything on it now, but it's just sort of a reminiscence there of anyone who was around people who had something that you could possibly die from, right? It meant you were the threat too, and so you were attacked. And that's why remember Princess Diana, some of you, when she went into the hospitals, and she was one of the first to touch, or known, let's just say, the elite, to, it was seen as like she was dirtying herself, right? To touch somebody who was sick, let alone, touch somebody who had HIV or AIDS or, anything like that, right? So that sort of opened and helped raise awareness. She did a lot of that in Africa, all over the world, really. So anyway, went off on tangent there, but it's like, the association, that saying, death by association, so that thing. So anyway, subliminal stress, invisible shadow. So in 2019, I went around Australia twice and visited all my family twice. So I don't live near my family, and I definitely don't now because I'm in Hawaii. But I did a tour, and my family live in in pretty much every state in Australia. So I did a tour around, and I stayed with all my family and some friends, and did these little workshops around subliminal stress. And I didn't. It was interesting because I was listening to Source, and it was like I had to go again. So I went in the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. It was so like January, February, and around November. And then the shutdown happened, right? So just interesting around that. And then my grandfather passed away, and so we had to have a funeral via Zoom. My uncle passed away. My other uncle passed away. Another one died twice and then came back. You know that story, some of you. Like a lot of, like, this isn't about loss and grief, don't get me wrong. It's about listening and knowing there's stuff in the field, right? Stuff in the field. That stuff in the field, I call the shadow, the invisible shadow. How the invisible shadow impacts our nervous system. So that's what this program was about back in 2019. Now that came in around 2014, 2015, and I was teaching a lot about earthing, electrically earthing the body. Do you remember anybody back in the day? Right? Even past that. And there was all this history with my father who, I mean, I talked about my father and what he did a lot. I don't want to go right into it, but he's a magnetics specialist, right? And his books are crypto secret in the Defense Force, right? Beyond top secret, crypto secret, which means that he can't talk about his work to anybody for any reason, even now. And so I would ask him questions because I knew he worked with, so it's called degaussing, or the Gauss, which is the measurement of magnetics. They call it something different now. But he was the one, and still possibly, he's retired now, but possibly, I think he did the big ship, the Endeavour, the replica of, you know, the Endeavour, the big sailing ship. Because vessels need to be demagnetized or degaussed, right? When they go through, so he would work on submarines, he would work on vessels for the Defense Force all around the world, like, well, not all around the world, with our allies. So, you know, Western big, you know, America, UK, Australia. He went all over the world and did the I don't know what you would call it. I call it the math, but you know, the coding of ports, right? And the reason for all of this is when vessels go through the sea, they build up energy, friction, noise. So with submarines, they were doing it for noise, how to make them silent going through so they're not picked up on radar and sonar, all of that sort of stuff, right? Bear with me. It relates to our physical vessel, right? So this is who I grew up with. You know, I said to him one time, you know, was I around you when you were doing this work? And this was only maybe five years ago or 6 years ago or something. I was just like curious, where was I when he was doing all this work? And he said, we would roll the blueprints out across the living room floor and you were crawling all over them. Because, and the reason why I'm asking is because my dad wasn't always physically in my life because he was all over the world, right? And also my mum and dad split when I was probably 7-ish, right? But he was he was always away anyway. But when I was with him, what was happening? So I started to ask these questions of where was I and how, because I knew so much of what he was doing and I wasn't able to even see the books or his work. he wasn't able to talk about how did I know. And the reason why I know is because he started asking me about my work. Okay, so genetics, DNA in the field, like energetically, all of that, right? It's there. So what's my work, or what was he seeing? I remember staying with him for about 3 or 4 days, and it was just he and I, and it's never just he and I, because if I go to Sydney where he is, my sister's there and my nieces and nephews and my stepmom, you know, there's always a lot of people around, and it's sort of like they're I won't say party people, but they like to have a drink and a chat and some food, and you know, there's always, you know, open door sort of, you know, so there's always people around. But this time it was just me and my dad. And my dad is a brilliant man, like he's a freaking genius, but he's quiet. He's a big man, but he's quiet about his work, obviously. His nickname was Hush Harrison. They literally called him Hush Harrison. And I understand it now, and I feel the pain of being a genius and having his information still used today in the military. So he can't talk about it. Can you imagine not being able to talk about your whole life's work? Hush Harrison. Look, I can feel it in my body as I talk about it. What, you know, how that must, I just can't comprehend it fully, how that must be. Right? That everything you've worked towards and you've developed ways of knowing that no one else has. And for the last, since the 60s, actually since the late 50s, have been in use, and you can't tell anybody that you were the, you know, that's your work, or that's how, you know, all these other people who are electrical engineers and physicists and whatnot are coming off your shoulders. Do you see what I mean? Like, so here I am, just putting him out there, that he's done some really awesome work. Anyway, my point is, when I started looking at just recently, one of his manuscripts was released, and he gave it to me. So it's this old handwritten, it's like this thick, like even, you know, old school, because, you know, there was computers, but only people like him had access to those computers, and they were as big as this house, right? So when I was a little kid and I'd go to visit my dad and he was still working certain places, me and my brother and my sister, we would go to the place where he's working, which was naval base, right, somewhere, you know, along the coast where they're watching for submarines and all that sort of stuff. And the whole place was computers. Do you see what I mean? Like, and now look what we got. So, so he had a lot of knowledge about electronics. Obviously, he's an electrical engineer, and he did work, you know, come out of the Defence Force and work with computers and stuff like that for a while, but he went back in. My point being that there's a lot of points there. So the technology and how we pick it up, so all these instruments, this is one of my phones, there's another one, this is my old phone. Now I use it for my American phone because my Australian one doesn't work here, so this is my old little retro Apple, right? So cute, I love this phone. Anyway, doesn't work as well, but so where am I going with this? Subliminal stress. So talking with my dad, and he has an injury, and he you know, he can't fly anymore and things like that because his leg, he nearly got it amputated, but he fought to keep it, but now he gets a lot of pain in his leg. So I went around there about 5 years ago or so, or maybe longer actually, and I don't put my energy knowings onto family or anybody. Like, it really, if you ask me, I'll tell you, but if you don't ask me, you won't know what I do, really. Like at a party, you know, if I go out, like rarely go to parties and stuff, but when I did, or even family gatherings, it's like very rare that I'll start chirping on about what I do, unless you ask me specifically. Like I'll give you, you know what I mean? Because I used to, back in the day, do that. I was so excited about energy and all the rest of it, and I was like, oh, I can help you there and I can help you there, and then I learned, no, it's not. That's not how we roll, right? So my dad was in a lot of pain one morning, and I just said to him, I had all my little magnets. I think I have them here. I had all my little magnets. I carry, like, this is my little energy medicine kit, right? So it's got a spoon for earthing. It's got selenite. I usually carry a smaller one, but it got stolen, so now I've got that one. And these little magnets, so actually my magnets got stolen too, so these are new ones, but they've got all fancy stuff on them. But these little magnets, which are around, they're stuck together. They're like really stuck together. There we go. Around 500 Gauss, 400 to 500 Gauss. Why is that important? Because I generally never teach you about magnetics unless you're doing a full program, and I haven't run one of those for a long time, because you can heal with magnetics and you can harm with magnetics. The same with sound. Do you understand? So why I'm giving you the Gauss, because don't just go and grab any old magnet because, you know, and think you're doing something awesome, because you won't understand it, and you could grow the tumor rather than shrink the tumor. Do you understand? So I'm not teaching you about magnets, so don't just go and grab any old magnet off the fridge, or the fridge ones are really low anyway, unless you know what you're doing, okay? That's my caveat. If you do and something happens, it's on your back. Take no responsibility because I haven't taught you. I'm giving you information that you can then go and look up, or go and do a class or a course or something, whoever's doing that these days. I don't think there's many that actually teach that stuff. But so I used my magnets on him, and in particular what are called source points. So source points are points on the meridian that are just that, source points. They're like major gates in that meridian. So again, I can't teach you about that today. Maybe I'm supposed to teach energy medicine or something. Anyway, so holding particular source points and using their magnetics, and his pain completely went away. And I kid you not, I told this story probably once or twice years ago. I tend not to tell stories like this because I don't, you know, I just don't. It feels uncomfortable to me. But I'm talking about, it's interesting what's coming in. I'm talking about subliminal stress and why all this background. So you see in a moment why I'm telling all these stories, I feel, because it's just transmitting through. So yeah, okay. He got up and he was like literally dancing a jig. Like, he's a big man. He's over 6 foot, right, and solid. And he's going, "You healed me. It doesn't hurt." And I'm like, "Stop." Because I didn't know what, like, I'm like, like, just take it easy still. Just because it doesn't hurt, you don't want to like go jumping around, because it wasn't just he had an injury or anything. I remember when I was a little girl, like probably before many of you were born. We were little. And I remember my dad laying on the couch, and I it's just a vague memory, and I heard that my grandmother, his mother, flew from Western Australia to Sydney to stop him from getting his leg amputated. So there was an injury when I was young, but it's something to do with the bone. It's not an aggressive cancer as such, but it's a bone issue, right? So it's not like it's gonna just heal. Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm saying, please just take it easy. Like, I know you can't feel any pain or whatever, but it lasted. He started walking. He got a dog later on, and Buster has passed away now, but he got an old dog, and he would go walking with this dog every day, and you know, he didn't cure it. He wasn't cured. I don't cure anybody. You cure yourself. Like it's a facilitation of what you can receive, like these circles in grace. Anything that I do. In fact, I spoke to a lady yesterday, and she said, I remember one of the classes where we locked eyes, and she said, and I saw and felt your soul, and she opened, and she said, and you really saw me, and I said to her, I've seen you since the day I met you. I see you every time you're in my field, even if you're not in my field, and you're in my, like you're a student or a client or you come here, all of you that are here regularly. I see you. What the difference is that she was feeling is she wasn't receiving until that day. Do you feel that? When you're not open to receive or not ready and there's fear there, I'm pouring into you and it's just washing right over. I see all of you all of the time. I'm transmitting to you every story, from the moment I turn up, there's transmission. When you're open, ready to receive, so your fear of love is being accepted, because it's love, right? When you have a fear of love, it's difficult to receive love. It feels uncomfortable. Another lady wrote to me. It's interesting. So everything I'm saying is a teaching. So just know that. I'm telling a story about this. We're doing mystic musings today, obviously. I don't know. I just rocked up. I was like, I don't know what we're going to talk about today. I'm just telling you my life, right? But in everything is a teaching. Everything. Your stories, other people's stories, my story. I'll show you a teaching in everything, because we're here for. So she wrote and she said, one of these, she was listening to the replay, and she said, there was so much transmission. She could feel it, but what was happening it was too much. She felt it was too much for her, and her body she started to laugh, like almost uncontrollably. And it was awesome because she was so aware of how she was receiving and how her capacity, because it was one of the ones a few weeks ago where it was really like, I was kicking it. It was like, right? It wasn't me. It was just really strong connection and telling story, right? So the more I free flow in storytelling, it's like the more transmission there is, because I'm not thinking or reading or you know what I mean, or going, oh, we have to do it this way and that way. Anyway, so I wrote back to her and I said, beautiful, and the stretching of the container is what she was feeling, and then the like, oh my God, and then the laughter. Do you know what I mean? Have any of you felt that? It's like just so much. It's like, or you hurt yourself and you laugh, like you kick your toe, or you like, it's that sort of thing. So it's just to say, I said to her to make sure she earths, and she says she earths beforehand all the time. So she's learnt, she spoons her feet and all of that. So I said, if you feel that, do it through there, because as you're sort of going, you can toggle that, as you're raising. But I always suggest that if it feels okay and it's tolerable, whatever's going on for you from these connections, to see if you can accept it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh my God, it'll either feel really, really good or really, really bad. Either one. How can you accept? It just is love and fear. And love and fear doesn't hurt. It just is. It's what you put onto it, what your beliefs and conditionings are, that you layer over what's happening, what you're experiencing in your vessel, in your body, right? oh, that feels good, or that feels bad, or I'm laughing and I don't know why I'm laughing, so there must be something wrong, right? So the fear comes in, but it just is. When it just is, you're in that neutral space and you can allow it. And if the fear gets too much and you feel you want to titrate that a bit, then you have practices that you can bring in, right? So I'm just going to check the chats in case there's, can't see anything. So say hello if you're around. I'm just going to check the Facebook. See if anyone's there as well, because I've just been focusing on Zoom. So I'm just feeling into all those stories I just told you and what needs to come back and complete. So everything that I've spoken about is a stressor, or can be seen as a stressor, right? Something that stresses the nervous system, or the nervous system is touched by, right? So it comes in the field. So part of your 10 bodies, right, or nearly all of the bodies are energetic, right? The physical body is one, but the rest of them are pretty much, energy. Well, the physical body is energy too. Everything is energy, but like if we want to categorize. So the information is in the field and it's being picked up by aspects of us that are outside our physical body. It hits our physical body or comes in or is filtrated in to our physicality, hits our nervous system. So our nervous system goes ding, 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 ding. Oh, this is happening, there's a fear, or there's a negative mind goes there's something that's going to wipe us out. Alert, alert, alert. And the positive mind is basically going, no, that's okay, or yes, that's okay. It's basically a yes or a no. So, so subliminal stress, the invisible shadow, coming back to that. The reason I brought up everything that I've just told you is part of the training that I used to do, and why I'd bring my dad in was because of how I understood the magnetics, and then I would talk to him. He would ask me questions and I would say to him, this is how I work with the physical as a vessel. Now the language is important because my dad's Navy vessel. And then he showed me in this manuscript, and that's why he gave it to me, because he was allowed to by then. But there's still another one that he can't talk about. But this one he could. And it was around submarines. And when I looked at the images that were drawn, he'd drawn them in this manual and typed it, right? Typewriter. This thing, it's like old school. I still got it. And there were the blue and the red lines. And I said, oh, that's so interesting. When I work with the physical, we have the blue and the red line, the positive and the negative, or the mother and the father. And I said, but we also have this neutral, and the neutral is really important. And then I asked him later on, it was probably about 6 months later, I was thinking, I wonder if he understood, it's a bit much to go into now, but the heart aspects and how that would cross-reference with what was happening with physical vessels, right? Ships and submarines and whatnot, right? How, I was looking at the correlation between his work and my work. Long story short, it's all there until the heart makes sense. But so what I work with, the energetic, the subtle energies that I'm working with are in the earth. in nature. My dad, when he was from 17, he joined the Navy early, and he would stand on the ocean, on the shore with an older oceanographer. And that oceanographer, he told me his name and everything. I looked him up. I can't remember his name now. Sorry about that. But but you could Google who was the first Australian to orbit the moon, and it was this man. So that was my dad's mentor when he was 17. They would look at the ocean to understand the language and the movement, oceanography, right? But when I was a kid, he would walk out the front door and he'd look at the sky and he'd tell me what the weather was going to be. He'd tell me all about, I thought this man was magic, right, as a little kid. Because it's like he knew, he just knew everything. He bred bees before it was popular. So I grew up with, from very young, I'm talking like 4, 5. My dad bred 3 different species of bees and sold the honey. We had a little farm, all this sort of stuff. So he was nature bound, but he was science. Whereas my dad's twin brother was science, but he went into, he's more like me in a way. He's got a degrees in science, but he went naturopathy, homeopathy. He wrote books on pendulums and crystal healing and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's this other side. So it's like my uncle and my dad. They're mirror image twins. One's left-handed, one's right-handed. One's sort of more feminine, one's more masculine. Not, my dad would never wear pink and purple, for instance. You know what I mean? And whereas my uncle would wear I guess back in the day, more feminine colors. It doesn't relate today, right? But this is like, in the 70s, before anybody knew anything. So it's just interesting. So I'm reflecting, and the reason I just caught myself, I'm like, where this is going, because a lot of my personal story's been coming up. It's like I need to write again. Haven't written for a couple of years. And all my personal stories been coming up, and references to sort of like this, like why we are the way we are, nature and nurture, and the sciences of what it means. So let me bring it back. I know I'm all over the shop today because we're just flowing mystically, but so this is what's been coming up in the last few days. A lot happens in my days. A lot of stuff goes through, so when I talk about this, right, and coming to that neutral point, so the positive and negative mind and the neutral mind, right, and the levels of awareness of, what would you call it, of awakening, let's say, or your evolutionary development. There's a part, and those of you that are on Zoom know this, but others might not. There's levels of, or stages of rising, right? Stages of rising. And what correlates with that is how you see love and fear. So in the lower parts, or I nearly said realms, lower realms, lower parts, lower consciousness, we can only see love, or we can only see fear. But the love that we see isn't purity of love. It's an animal instinct love. It's what you can feel or fulfill that I'm missing. I haven't completed myself. So I want a relationship or a friendship or a connection with you because you may feel, I'm putting it onto you to make me happy. Fill my holes, fill my void, fill my, fill my less than. And what happens is you realize, well, they're useless because they can't make me happy. It's their fault. And you move on. Someone else can do exactly the same thing. And you continue that until you raise in your consciousness and you're able to see more of the two. And so when you're in the love, you realize that there is also the other side, but you're still not in both of them. You're sort of toggling between the two. So when you're in bliss or joy or happiness or any of those emotions, right? You know you've experienced pain and suffering, right? Physical pain and all of that. But you're not aware of it when you're in the other side. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? But you're aware of it. So if I brought it up, you're like, oh yeah, suffering. Or when you're in suffering, you're like, oh, I remember love. You know, when I watched that movie, I felt love, or whatever it is, right? Or that puppy, or that little bird, or you know, whatever rocks your boat, you know, that makes you go, ah. And anyway, somebody just popped in there. I'm not going to talk about that. It's another story. So like little critters. I love critters. Anyway, we're not going there. When you get to this next stage where when you're experiencing love and bliss and joy, you're also experiencing the fear and the pain and the suffering and the sorrow. Like you there's no separation. It's the two, and it's at the same time, right? It's just that. So at any moment you can look at something and it's all there. And I remember back in the day, I'm telling a lot of old stories, where I sat in a circle with one of my early teachers, and she said, we just sat and looked at each other's shadow, basically, and recognized that we can. So if I sit and look at Mercedes, for instance, I won't do it, but you know, just as an example, but looking at her in her angelic state, knowing that she has the capacity for all the atrocities that are here on the earth, right? And knowing that, and that may bring up some fear for some people, but when you accept the full human and the capacity and potential, love and fear of love, of that human, it's when I say, well, you know, and I'm saying Mercedes because I'm looking at you, I can't see anybody else. So if I only like you or connect with you because you have a bright smile, for instance, so you're fulfilling something in me, you make me feel a particular way, and that feels good to me, or nice to me, or not, it's not challenging to me, right? It's not challenging. So you're all right, you can come into my circle. I guess I'm going to just say we're setting ourselves up. Like we set it up by thinking that a human being is only 1% of, because you're only literally seeing 1% of your reality anyway. I think the maximum is like 3% of your reality out of a general human's consciousness. When we shift in consciousness, we have the ability to see, but the general state of consciousness does not. Like I've heard scientists, some of them are my friends in fact, give talks on what we can see and what we can't see. And they say what we can't see, I can actually see. And I've drawn it. I actually did an artwork. I just posted it on Instagram. So those on Instagram, the circles, so the image of the tree and the circles, the black circles around the tree. So I made that on Sunday. Literally got caught up in making this this image because well, that image is for the retreat. So there's an early bird for that if you want it. You can go and have a look. It's called the early bird. 4 earlies is $400 off, right? So every early that goes, it will go up an extra $100, right? Because the full price is $697 or something like that. So anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about, but that's what the image was for, right? And I was talking to Eric and I was saying, you know, I'm trying to, or I'm attempting to, because my artwork is what I see and what I experience, and so I was trying to make an artwork that would elicit what the potential is for the person on that retreat, right? And so it took me all day. I did numerous images. I'll probably post different ones, but the reason why I'm saying this is because the black circles are what I call black plasma. And so it's not exactly because it's obviously it's an artist's interpretation, but I see black plasma, and apparently humans aren't supposed to see black plasma, but I see it all the time. And black plasma, you can Google it. There's not, I mean, there might be a bit more on it these days, but when I was seeing it originally, no one talked about it. It was, you couldn't even, you didn't even know what to put in to look at it. But I would hear bits of like, they would talk about Moses speaking to God through the dark cloud or the black cloud, the darkness, you know, it depends on what you, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And then carried on. And then I'd hear something else about the, you know, the Madonna coming through in the, you know, in the dark, blah, 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 and angelics and whatnot. The dark or the black plasma is higher light than white light. So what we understand is light and dark, and we say, well, the dark is not so good, right? I long for the dark in this way, because some of you will take that the wrong way, right? You'll take it how you've been conditioned. It's very hard for me to be in the dark because I see light, right? It's light in my head. I close my eyes and it's light. Like it's like I've accepted it. It happens. If you're on that journey, it will happen to you too. So you'll have a silence, a deep silence of mind. So I don't have thought in my head, but I have sound. And we call that the sound of the spheres. Some of you know this, we've talked to. If you've done Evolver, you would have heard my stories, right? Because they're a little bit more mystical side of how we are and our potential. So I call it the roaring sound of silence, because how you hear is completely different. It's with the ear of the heart. It doesn't come through the physical ears, right? Same with the sight. I can see the light with my eyes open or closed. So if I'm visioning and I close my eyes, I see the same thing. I open my eyes, I see the same thing. It's not, that's a seer. You're not using your physical eyes. It's beyond the, well, it's part of your physicality because it's within your head, physical, you know. Where am I going with this? So because the energy, so I started off with this live, because the energy's been really like, if you feel it and you can sort of feel they're like little, right, the last few days. And we got a hurricane coming, it's supposed to hit tomorrow. So, but I looked at the ocean and like you can see how the ocean pulls back and it's just awesome anyway. See how it all comes back together? Let me pull it together for you. So we blacked out little things like the lights of the oven that shone from the kitchen into the bed. It's just very subtle, like all these little lights, and put tape over the light of the fan, and and it was like, and I didn't do it, Eric did it. He goes, because I wasn't complaining, I was stating that even the little pixie lights were, when I'm full, when there's extra stuff going on, because of the sensitivity, it's data, it's information. And sometimes it's like, it's just that little bit more, and it's like, oh, just give me some, like, I just want to not touch anything, not hear anything, not see anything, just be nothing, right? Just, so the last few days it's been last few days it's been me trying to not pick up anything extra, which is ridiculous because it's just a little large. Yeah. See, years ago, when my seeing kicked into a different stage, so I would walk around the house and literally, you could do it if you close your eyes really tight, you'll see light. There would be a spark of light. Like, that's science, right? That's the rods and cones of your eyes, blah, blah, blah. You can look that up. That's not what I'm talking about. So everybody has that. There's another light that when you walk around in the dark, dark, you can see. So there's night vision, and then there's mystic vision, I guess. And I have this thing about having the lights on. I just don't like the lights on. And so when you live with other people, it's like, how do we negotiate this? I just, like, I can cook, and I can write in the, like, I used to sit there in the pitch black just writing. When I was much younger, I'd write my uni assignments, because I'd write them in my sleep, like I'd dream them. Usually the intro and conclusion, because they were the hardest for me, right? So I'd write them last, because I need to know what on earth I was like rambling on about to then do the introduction and the conclusion. And I'd dream those, and I'd write them in the dark, and that'd be awesome. It's almost like a channel before I knew I was a channel. Do you know what I mean? So I always had pen and paper near the bed, or pencil and paper near the bed, because when you write with pen, you don't know if it's working or not. A lot of pens don't work for me. It's just I'll buy a whole pack of pens, and it'll work for the first few letters, and then they'll run out, and I have to get the next pen or work. There's something about my energy. So I'm a pencil lover, and colored pencils, lead pencils, these awesome mechanical pencils, like, I love them, because you just refill them. They're my go-to, and they're cool. They feel good too, but they're awesome for artists to draw as well. So going off on tangent, lights, sound. So this is really about the subliminal stress. These are all the stressors that are in your field. So whether it's lights, whether it's sound, whether it's people, whether it's the heat or the coolness, whether it's having a shower and then being itchy because the water is changed, or whatever, all sorts of things. I could go on and on, and it's just, yeah, it's just how it is. So subliminal stress, invisible shadows. The invisible shadows we could call, I did do a part around all the EMFs, and this is before the 5 came in, and now we're beyond that, but I have all these stories about what 5 was doing, and but before that, even in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and why I started telling you about my dad, so I'm coming full circle. Wait, just hold on, I'm coming, I'm getting there. Is that the research that I did around what I had a knowing on took me back to the Navy and the Defence Forces. Of course it did, because some of these what would you call them, ways of knowing. So there's long and short waves, right? And when you're working with submarines back in the day, they were trying to get signals to the submarines very low in the water so that they didn't have to come to the surface and then they would be bombed or attacked or whatever. Okay, so that's sort of the gist of it. And so they would create the technologies to be able to send signal through water so that they didn't have to rise. Now, those poles, that technology, I don't want to name any of it here, but this is old technology. It's been around for like 60 years or more, probably. They had it in towns, and they found that the people starting to get sick and certain symptoms and whatnot, so they had to remove that. Now, all these years later, we're talking about 5G and all this other stuff, right? And not to get into that, because that's not my point. That's just one piece of information that's coming in. But we've had so much for, like I said, you know, as long as pretty much everybody who's here has been alive, you know, even if you're in your, I mean, oh, my dad's in his late 70s, mid 70s, late 70s. And so, you know, what they were working on, like, it's been around forever. Everything that's happening has been here. It's just shifts and changes, right? You've been feeling the roadworks. Yeah. I know when so this is nervous system too, right? Because your skin is, you know, a big organ. Sometimes when I'm swimming and I'm driving home, there was a point of time where I couldn't stand it. And so there was something going on in the water. It's like how polluted the water is, you know. I believe, I don't know, I didn't test it, but that's what I feel, because for ages I haven't been itchy at all until yesterday. I felt just itch on my forearms, but sometimes it's the whole body, and it just feels like you've got little critters biting you. Like it's like almost painful, like little pinpricks all over your body. And it's like, wow, there's something in the water that's setting that off. And so even though it's the ocean, there's certain parts of the ocean that, you know, I'm a bit of an ocean snob now, because I'm like, you know, when we swim down that end, it's usually really much dirtier, right? But up this end, the water's really clear and we're not getting itchy. So there's something going on, and that other end is close to the closer to buildings and what do you call it? A resort. The resort is down that end. So I don't know what they're doing, but the water's different. It could just be how it's flowing through, you know what I mean? Anyway, so knowing that, now I know where to swim and I don't get itchy. So, all right, let's wrap it up. So subliminal stress, invisible shadow. Just know that the majority of what's going on for people, for humans, you can't see it. You can't see it. I was telling Eric about originally what the shadow, I call the shadow, was what was being built by when the satellites were first, going up into space, and they had to build this field, which was like a sort of shadow, so that the like I'm saying it layman's terms, but you know, I'll write about the scientific side of it. That's what I was doing last night. But in layman's terms, it's so it can bounce the information back, right? It bounces back and forth. Do you understand? So if there's no field, it would just keep going, going, going. So they needed to build up that. So there's so much space junk and shadow up there now. But then I started to call the invisible shadow all of this other data and information that I get all the time, right? Bombarded with information. And so a lot of what here comes the hurricane. Hang on, I need to close this. That was a nice breeze, but it's blowing everything over. All right, so there's an example, right? What's in the field now? That is pleasant, right? But what's within it? So who gets hay fever? Anyone get hay fever or sinus, right? Or you know, there's all sorts of allergies, right? That through that wind could have took some of you out. I don't necessarily say I have allergies, but occasionally I get sinus. Sinus is linked or related to triple warmer. Triple warmer is your stress response, your energetic stress response, the masculine or the yang stress response. So if ever you get a lot of stuff along you know, where your sinuses are, you sort of see, I'm a bit swollen today because I went to bed really late. Triple warmer, you can do figure eights from behind your ears. So this is actually it's like a wind tunnel, right? That opens up. We get these vortices that open up, and so there's too much information, and then you just do those little figure eights really slowly, like you've got a vortex, like a coming out all the way to the end of the field, and it closes off. We used to just do like a figure eight like that. You're just drawing a little figure eight with your fingers, but I do it twisting my fingers, right? Positive, negative, like a magnet. So I'm using my fingers as the magnet, which is much safer if you don't know how to use magnets. And I'm doing like the back of my hand, and then see how I flip it? I'm doing that, and then I flip it and use my nails. So I'm doing the polarity while I do the 8. With me? So then I flip it and come back around. I know all the hacks, the short to how to combine energetics so that you only have to do one movement rather than, you know, do it and then do the flipping, you know, all of that. So you could do that. It helps with sinus, sore eyes, all that sort of stuff. If your wind points are blown that are related to triple warmer, which are behind the ears, just behind the ears, that bony place behind the ears. So, all right, subliminal stress, invisible shadow. So coming back around, all the stories that I just told were related to that. So I started to write, or actually not write, because I have so much writings on it, because every time I do a class or something, I'll have research or my notes or whatever. And yesterday, well, it was actually after dinner, so it was, you know, in the evening, there was something in the field that just made me go, oh, I'm going to choose that and just see what I've got and put it into, you know, put it all together and start writing something, because we have the videos, right? We have the actual video course, but that information, I was reminded, because I do things and I move on. I go, oh, people know that now because I've taught it maybe a couple of times. I can move on now. I move on to something else. But majority of people have no understanding. They might have a bit of an inkling to earthing. They might have seen a movie or whatever. There's a lot of stuff about earthing. They've got no idea about the electrical earthing and the polarity, and how you can earth to the cows come home with your copper bedding thing and all of that. And then I can come and test you, or somebody else can come and test you, or we could do the biofield viewer on you and show you that you're not. Because when there's stressors in the field, it's throwing the aura out, it's throwing the subtle energies out, which then you have no connection to the earth in the same way. So you're not protected by the earth. So then you get inflammation. Usually if you've got swelling or pain in your ankles, legs, lower legs, knees, hips, a bit headachy or you know, a bit sort of wobbly in the head, you're not earthed, right? So you can earth the general way, but there's more advanced ways of earthing. And the only way that I found that out was through working with hundreds of people, going to conferences. So I'd go to these conferences back in the day. I don't go anymore because it just seems like, oh, it's a lot of time. I love talking to people. That's what I loved. I just have people all around just chatting away, like telling them about energy and testing them and all of that. But all that sort of, you know, having a stall and all that, I can't. No. It's not my thing. But anyway, doing those in the early days, what would happen is, you know, those big conscious living conference expos and consciousness, this and that. Like I used to go to those, and I'd go and do talks and stuff there. But what would happen is I'd have my stall, and I sometimes I had the biofield viewer there, and so I would test some of their energies, show them their energy in the biofield viewer live in video, and then I would correct the energy, and they could see it instantly, the shift. And then I would educate them so that they could go away and use those tools themselves, right? I wasn't selling anything necessarily. I was teaching, I was sharing. Do you know what I mean? Doing that over and over and over for like all those people over long periods of time, and then having my own clinical practice where I saw people in person for God knows how many years, thousands of people. But in these conferences, what they would do is they would go around to all the different stalls, and some would be doing Reiki, some would be doing the bars, what's that, bar, access bars, some would be doing gong, sound gong, some will be doing, all sorts of things, all sorts of types of healing and helpful things that are all beautiful. I'm going to say this. I am not against any modality. I'm not against anything. There is truth in everything, right? So this is what started me to teach teachers, to teach energy workers, because they would be going around to, and I was further down the back, right? So they would see all these other people and have all these different modalities, and then they'd come to me and their energies were still, and it wasn't me saying it, you could see it in the biofield viewer, right? And when I corrected it, you could see the correction. So what was happening? Didn't mean that those modalities don't work. And they're just ones I pulled out of my hat, right? There's all sorts of things there. It meant that when you're not connected, when you're not earth, when you have irregular energies, which is mainly what I'm talking about, there's an irregularity in the energies that prevents, so you can earth, but it won't hold. You can heal or have a beautiful session that it's like, yep, you're done, like, you know, kinesiology, anything. And there's other things going on, what I call irregularities. There's three main types of irregularities. When they're out, nothing holds. If you're a practitioner and you know that, Do you see? What you do is going to be exponentially more helpful for them and for you, right? Because you're not going to have to be go. So if you're out to make money and, like, I was going to say rip people off, then don't worry about that. But if you're truly in service to help people, then look at that. Or have your modality tested, right? Go contact Thornton Streeter. He's one of the, John Catchpole is the developer, the coder. He extended the biofield viewer. Does amazing things now. I still have it. I just can't use it on the technology I have here, so I have to get another computer that can hold that. So I'm working on that so that we can do it even on these lives. We could do it because I could see the ones of you on Zoom. I'll be able to put that through. But we also have, so I've jumped again, but it's about the biofield viewer. Purely because you can see what's happening. Like the reason why Thornton Streeter and I became friends and then colleagues, and we started to develop new technology together for years, John Catchpole, Thornton Streeter, and a bunch of us. And I was the Australian representative. We had people in every country, and we would meet regularly in different places around the world and do research on each other and with others, with all this different technology, because we were seeing what else. And because I can see and I work with energy, I would be like, yeah, you can see that, but you can't see that. So how do we make it even more to get the real subtleties, right? So now what they can do is I just got shown, I'll see if I can post it. I got shown one of the ladies that works with the biofield. She's a doctor, bioengineer, I don't know. Anyway, she has been putting MRIs and what's the other one? PET and MRI scans through the biofield viewer. And what it's doing, so she did a talk, and I'll have to ask if it's public, can I share it? So if I can share it, I will, if you're interested. It's real nerdy. It's like real medical stuff, but I love that. So these other ways of scanning the body or the energies, and X-ray and all of these, they only show so much. They can only do so many pixels. And the biofield has exponentially more pixels. So therefore you could see more, right? So when you put an MRI into a biofield to see the imagery through this magnification of imagery, it gives you more information, right? So ultimately, all this technology is for non-invasive screening, right? That's what we're continually looking for, non-invasive ways for health and wellness. So how do we find cancer cell, blah, 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 without having to cut you open, right? And we can see that. You can see that. That's how I found, Spirit told me about my friend's cancer. Her doctor couldn't find it, and she kept coming to me, and I am not a medical doctor, so I do not diagnose. So I just said to her, I'll say things like, you need to go back to that doctor, get it looked at again. So if you ever hear me say stuff like that, you can ask me, but I'm not allowed to, it's illegal for me to diagnose, right? So I look at and work with the energy. So she went back to the doctor, they didn't find anything. She came back, we had a chat, and I said, you need to go back and ask him to look at this or whatever, right? And I said, and if they won't, you need to find a new doctor. They didn't, so she found a new doctor. They still didn't find anything, and I said, go back, ask again. She did, and they found her cancer. She's alive today, and this was 5 years ago, I believe, about 5 years ago. What are we, 3, 2, yeah. And so it's not diagnosing, it's knowing the energy and going, there's something else going on here. And, you know, yeah, anyway, so that's my story. Man, you got a lot of stories out of me today. All right, subliminal stress. So know that all the triple warmer, so I'm just going to say this. So I've told you all these stories. So what? Why are you telling me these stories? Like, well, how's the story going to help me? Blah, 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 right? Everything that I've said, the correction or the how is basic energy medicine. I have talked about basic energy medicine of earthing, grounding, polarity, irregularities, triple warmer, spleen, and their dance together for maybe 15 years, right? So go Google that or go on the Instagram. I don't know if there's any on my YouTube. I have a different YouTube now. There used to be all the little things. But if you're interested in that sort of stuff, I can start teaching it again, bits and pieces. It's not what I'm necessarily called to. But for some people, ultimately I'm about accepting what's going on, and you'll have miraculous shifts. And we're seeing that. Even in the call I had yesterday. It wasn't even a client. It was just somebody that was in my field, so I said, we need to talk, right? And just by identifying that, what was going on, she said she felt it in the body. It raised, like that's the fear or the trigger. It's trauma work, but it's not. It's human work. It's like our fear, our shadow, our shadow of the shadow. The dark within the dark, right? The Lilith, if you want to say that, right? The original dark, which isn't necessarily, we have to accept it so that it doesn't spiral into what some might call evil. I'm not into good and evil, but if you want to use that language, go for it. All right, your stories help. They are teaching. Sometimes it's easier to understand things through your experience. Subliminal stress is all around. It's how to deal with it. I'm aware of it sometimes. All right, so bringing it all around, why I was teaching what I was teaching and what's still available, and I don't know if I'll bring it out in the near future. It'll come out in some way because I'm putting all my notes and research together. And I started that last night, and it went to midnight, and I was like, enough. But I was excited. I was so excited because I'm a writer, I'm a creative, I'm an artist. I have so much information, and I know it's all sitting there in the archives. It's really difficult, and I have to shift to that. So I'm modeling this for you too. I have to shift that. I feel it's difficult, and just freaking do the structure. Just put it into chapters, and you don't have to sit here and listen to me. You can just go and read the book, right? Because I want to have it so that you can click on what I'm saying, so then you can see the process, right? Oh, this is how. So I don't know if you know this, but I've built apps and all sorts of things over the years, and then I go, oh, it doesn't look nice enough, so I'm not putting it out. I literally have an energy medicine app that I made, I think around the same time, about 5 years ago. And all the information sitting there, and I made it was just a free app, like, you know. And I made it specifically for my clients because they forget. And so I can just say, well, go on the app and do this one, and this is how you do it, so I don't have to keep repeating myself, right? And that's why I did it. But it never, it got made, and I sent it to my friend who's a physicist, and he looked at it and he was like, oh yeah, this is cool. But I wanted the human not to be me. So here we go, it's coming in my field again. So I'm thinking maybe I need to do this again. I wanted it to be cartoon people. I didn't want it to be like a person. I wanted it to be like a bit slick and some cartoons. Do you understand? And so I was asking my other friend in India, because he's a coder, and he was helping us with he's developed some awesome technology for health now. But I was asking him about how I could put me into a cartoon, so it's not me, it's just a cartoon of me doing the energy things, so that you're not just looking at me all the time, you know what I mean? Anyway, and then I don't know what happened, probably COVID, I don't know, but we didn't get around to it. So all of that information is there. I have all the documents, I've written it all up, it's all sitting there. It just needs to be put back in. So that in itself could be a book or an ebook, right? It's all there. So this is what I'm being called to. It's like there's so much information there. I prefer as a creator to continually do new things. But, it all gets left behind, and majority of people have never heard or seen that work. So that's what I'm being shown. Like, all right, what do you need? I keep asking this. What do people need? What's going on for them? Very few of you tell me, so I just have to just go on with it. But this is what's come up. The energies lately have been sort of building, or at least around here, been building, and I'm feeling it. So if I'm feeling, I feel everything, but I have ways of just accepting it, and it integrates, right? But when it's like, oh, this is a little bit more to integrate, okay, I bet you people are feeling this. I talk to people and they're like, oh my God, and I'm like, yeah, okay, right. So what are they doing? So I can give you all the energy medicine and all these hows and how to regulate your nervous system and all of that. What's the core of it? What's the core of it? So the work that I do now is what's the core of it? Because if you get the core of it, you don't need all the rest of it. But some people need all of it until they get the core of it. Do you understand? So the core of it is the love and fear, or the polarity of it, right? The research that I've been talking about, ultimately what we get to as we rise, as we move into accepting both love and fear, our energetics get to a place where we are neutralizing anything in our field. We are neutralizing what's in our field. So we do not have to do all this other stuff. That is your evolution. Your energetic evolution, physical evolution, your human evolution, your spirit evolution. Like, this is your evolution. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel it. It's just how you activate to neutralize it. And it's not just words. Do you understand? It's energetically. It's got to do with, so you got a few more minutes? We've been going a bit longer. We got class this afternoon, so I better not go too long, but wear myself out. Won't be able to do my classes this afternoon. How we can hold charge within our body, our positive and negative, let's call it. There's positive and negative little batteries, let's call them little batteries within our lower torso, let's call it, or our abdomen, our powerhouse. Now, when the body needs positive, it pulls from there. When it needs more negative, it pulls from there. So building that fuel house, our lower, there's so many names for it: lower Tantien, lower Dantian, our hara, our, the nabi, the navel, the, sort of all that area, right? Energetically, we can build. So diabetes, just off the top of my head, diabetes, for instance, is when inflammation isn't or like, you got your cell and inflammation's not able to go in or out of the cell for whatever reason. And however that works will be that diagnosis, right? Do you know what I mean? Like how things work in the body or don't work in the body, they'll label it, that's your diagnosis. It's like mental health. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this too. The traits, they'll say how many traits the person has. Oh, that's a trait of personality disorder, for instance, or that's a trait of schizophrenia or whatever, right? If you only got one of them, then you're not diagnosed that. But if you have all of them or close to it, then there's a diagnosis. Do you understand where I'm going? Right. So if you don't have that fuel house and you go to pull on that fuel house and it's not there, then the charge isn't there. So then there's a inflammation or whatever is happening and there's illness, right? So the energetics in the subliminal stress, that's the core of what I was teaching. Why? So that you don't have to be in fear, like fear of, oh no, all this stuff's going to hurt me, or I can't sleep with the Wi-Fi on. I don't worry about any of that. I just don't, because I neutralize it, right? I went to have all my physicals and everything. I don't take any tablet. I'm healthy, right? I'm over 50. I'm healthy. So I just want you to have that, I guess, I want to say hope, but it's not quite the right word. I want you to know your potential, your possibility as a human. That's what I'm here, conscious evolution. It isn't just, it's the whole system. And when you know how it works, you can navigate it much better. When you need more charge, when you cut your thumb, there's a charge on your thumb. There's a charge on every part of your body. And say it's 50 hertz, let's just say. Forget now what it actually is. I think it's something like 50 millihertz or something. Anyway, let's just go 50 for an example. When you cut it, it goes to 20. So the charge drops. Do you understand? So to heal it, you need charge to heal it, to get it back to 50, at least. So when your body has that charge, you can pull from the reservoir and heal, self-heal. When you're depleted, when you're deficient, it's harder. So how we neutralize is all to do with these sections. And those of you that have done intuitive studies, I call it the 3 intuitions. And then in other classes, I'll say the 3 minds. And in other classes, I'll say, oh, the 3 intelligences, people. And here I'm saying, oh, these lower, middle, upper. And when they're merging and working together, you get this field from the head that neutralizes your field. Is that exciting? Is that like perk you up, or am I just nerding out? Because I love this stuff. I'm like, really, our human, like I have studied the human most of my life, like professionally, but even before that, I was so in awe of like, wow, what, like we wake up, wow, like how we work. And what we don't know, right, this black plasma or the field that we can see, like the violet field, right? They say we can't see that. All the stuff they say we can't see. that I see. How they say birds navigate. This is years ago. I did research on this because I had to prove to my friend Carl, who's the who runs a university in the UK, and we were doing. Oh, this is a story I haven't told you. I'm always in the background of research, so you know I'm just like this. My name's never on anything, but anyway, occasionally I'll pop something out that I'll remember. Oh yeah, I was part of that. Because I was doing some research on, it was like transhumanism stuff, and I'm pretty neutral. I'll just say, okay, well, if you're going to implant things into the body, you need to know what that does to the human subtle energy, because I can see, I know, right? So I would be the one, almost like the ethics control, going, well, if you put that there and it's got a magnet in it, right? So the expertise on magnetism, it's in my history, right? So it's just stuff that right? How is that going to, like, what are the contraindications to the health of the person, the patient, the volunteer, or whatever, right? All of that sort of stuff. Anyway, where was I going with that? Carl. And Carl. Oh, I lost it. It's to with Carl. Oh, the birds. He said there was this research on, they were trying to work out how birds navigated. This is years ago. And there were some images that the scientists had rendered that they thought the birds might see. And it was to do with what's called magnetite. Anyone know what magnetite is? You heard of magnetite? Yeah, cool. Building your charge. Magnetite, so I was talking about magnetite for a long time and saying humans have magnetite, and a lot of science was saying we don't have magnetite and that's why we can't navigate or see in the same way, blah, blah, blah. But I could feel it, and I always felt it around my nose, like around here and in behind my nose. And then I looked at, bees have magnetite in their abdomen. Birds have it around the same place, around, you know, around sort of the, it's like in yoga we say where the nose meets the skull, right, in that area. But I can feel it activate, and when it got, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's magnetite. So science says that it's lightly through the human skull, right? I still disagree with that, but at least they're saying we have it now. Now, why is that important? Because, oh, now I know why they showed me the other research. Because the implant that they were putting into people in the UK was to help them navigate where north is. It was called North Sense. North Sense. I think they still do it, but North Sense. And it was where art meets science and technology and all of that sort of stuff. And the people that got it loved it, from what I could tell, right? But I couldn't understand why they would need that, because they have magnetite that would do the same thing if they were tuned into it, you see? So all the research that I'm involved in, I'm always saying, well, why do you need that? We can do that naturally, right? You can build that sense, and it's through the magnetite, because birds navigate through the magnetite. So do bees, all of that. There's other critters too that have it. But when they showed what the birds saw, the magnetism, when I talked to Carl about this, and I did some artwork to sort of show what I was seeing, it was the opposite. So where it was dark, it was light for me, and where it was light, it was dark. And so I also did viewing from different places, sitting and viewing to see how that magnetics, or where north, south, what it looked like was different. And it was. So do you understand, or have I'm being too cryptic? Because I can't tell you the whole lot. I'm just saying this live wasn't a circle and grace, apologies, but I do need to do circle. because I was scanning some people earlier that I need to sit for, but all of it is about the capacity of the human to heal, to self-heal. The capacity of the human that is so underestimated, and science is gently, surely catching up. Just listen to the mystics. Work with the mystics. Research with the mystics. Right? How quick... that's one of my... If I have any regrets, it is that I didn't go into science. I nearly did. I went into social sciences. But like if I had the science background as well, I wouldn't need... I do my own research, but I wouldn't... You know what I mean? It's like... Yeah. But then I came to the conclusion that, you know, if we need that piece of paper to be heard, like there's something wrong. Do you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people with degrees and education that are ridiculously not in tune. Right? You know them. You know them. Like they're just not. They're intelligent. They're not connected. So higher intelligence is when the three minds are merged. You have supreme intelligence. You have access. You have the neutrality. Neutrality in the center, but neutrality in the field as well. So you can neutralize. You're not going, right? So I think I'll finish my stories there. Did I go full circle on everything? Did I leave anything undone? I usually do, one or two little loops that I might not have come together. So you can see where I started and where I ended. You can see that it was all around neutralization and the human capacity and what we're able to do. So that's subliminal stress, the invisible shadow. And there is an online course of that, but I'll have to see. I'll feel into whether I re-release that or not. It's about 6 hours, because I don't think I'll ever run it again live. I'm not sure. Who knows? Too much else to do. All right. Let's just do a little short circle. I was actually going to do trance today. Didn't get it. I guess I did a little bit of... It wasn't trance, but all right. And yeah, it's interesting. Every time it's different, isn't it? I'm just going to see if there's any in the other chat. Mahalo. Someone said mahalo. So it's either Jennifer. Is it Jennifer Jean or is it... Who knows? I think it might be Jennifer Jean said that. Can't see on Restream what your name is. Welcome. All right, let's do just a short. So have your people in mind of who... Oh, just as I'm saying that, see something else came in. I woke up this morning. So have your people in mind. I woke up this morning and I got a message, like a real message, not a spirit message. Although it could be a spirit message come through a real message, because that's how it works, right? And it was a doctor who was writing about... I haven't read the full report yet, but just the introduction that was sent before you click on it was really interesting because... I'll give it a plug because it links to the painting, the Rise to Rose painting process, the intentional integration process. So that's the one with the early bird that's out now, right? So if you want to do that, if you want to do it and you can't afford it, or you think you can't afford it right now, I'll see what I can do about a payment plan, because it's not until April. But the thing is, I know that a lot of people don't have a lot of funds. So it's giving those people the opportunity to not only get $400 off, but also pay it off, right? If you wanted to go there, because I rarely do once I start doing something, I don't do it forever anymore. So this is because of Sai that I'm doing this retreat, right? But I've shifted it so that I can invite other people and it be a program on its own, right? So I've extended it a bit and all that. So anyway, why am I telling you that? Because this doctor was writing about his research around, this is my language, I call it stacking, or when I hack energy, like just, like doing the figure eight and turning the hand. So you're getting polarity and the eights and triple warmer, like you're stacking, right? So he was talking about stacking, but he used another more affluent language that meant stacking healing. And I'm bringing it up because that's what we do. And specifically, that's what we do with the canvas. You're stacking and building the energy, every layer, with what you're working on specifically for you through the direction of the story Rise to Rose, which I've touched on, these stages of evolution, these stages of development, and what's in those stages, and where are you, and what fears or what fear is coming up for you, and how you transform that in or via the tool of the magic wand we call the paintbrush, or the pencil, or the pen in our journal. You do not need to know how to paint. You may not have ever painted before in your life, or if you did, it was finger painting in kindergarten. The less you know, the better in some instances, because artists generally are too rigid in the way of it has to look a certain way. This is not making an art piece. This is a portal, a power generator that we build and stack the healing energy, the transformative energy that you've done in the class, and it's over 2 days. So I've made it shorter days, not full days, because you need to integrate. So you integrate in the evening, you sit with your painting and your work and your journal, and you come back the next day and we do the next stage. So you're stacking that as well, because I've done them in a day, and I've done them in a couple of hours, but it's so much. But when you allow yourself the space to delve and really go in. So anyway, this doctor was basically saying the same thing. Now, we've been doing this stacking of energy and healing for so long. It's even in programming crystals, right? So this particular crystal is programmed for a specific energy work that I do, but I haven't done for a while. It's high energy, right? But we can, and you've heard of Emoto's work. He doesn't talk about stacking, but it's like when you can infuse water, for instance, with healing. So sort of, I don't know, I haven't read the whole article, but it reminds me of homeopathy, right, where we put a little bit of, or even kinesiology, we used to use essences. You drop a little bit of an essence in a carrier, and the person puts it on there or under their tongue or whatever, that sort of stuff. But this, when I was reading what he did, took me to, this is what we do in intentional creativity. This is what we do in how we integrate through creative ways. We're stacking. Even the paper, if you did the little Sai, when we're screwing up the paper, we're releasing energy, releasing whatever was programmed into that paper through processes, man-made processes of making paper, releasing that and re-imprinting it, and then overlaying that, and then putting it on and stacking, and it's healing, 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 right? So they become power generators. Power generators are different to, like you've got orgone, orgone, where if there's EMFs and stuff or energies around that you don't want, there's this stacking of crystals and copper and coils and stuff in resins and whatnot, and you put them around. Do you know what I mean? Right, that's not what I'm talking about. Some people call those power generators. They're a bit different. The power generators I used to make, they were like there's only a few. If you've got one, right, hold on to that. Could be worth a fortune one day because I don't make them anymore. But I would crush. There's secret things, but they're all handmade, and the geometry hand drawn, hand cut, hand painted. The copper was cut and crushed, and I had liquid copper that I would paint with liquid copper, like, because it's a transmission. When my dad taught me that, he said when he worked with the computers, pregnant women and women on them at the moon time weren't allowed near the A-frames. And I said, why? And he said they would wipe the information off the gold in the A-frame. Right? So, or not the gold of the A-frame, something about the A-frame. And I said, oh, I'm using copper. And I didn't know why I was using copper. It's just intuitive. And he said, no, that's good, because it conducts in a different way, slightly different way, and that will prevent the loss of the information. So these power generators that I used to make for the conscious institution, or whatever you want to call it, the school that I used to teach in, I would make their spiritual tools. And they were, some of them, we called them power generators. And they were different shapes, different geometries that did different things. Anyway, long story short is these paintings, how I stack is similar to these power generators. That so you have these power generators, just say that's one of them, and you have it near you when you're doing your activations or your meditations. And rather than clearing the field, it builds in the energy that you've just created. And it continues to build. It's a power generator. It's a generator of that energy. So over time, I was talking to a lady yesterday I talked a lot yesterday about being like building the pillar of light, and where I worked in Perth. When I first got there, the energy was different, and as I worked there, because that's where my clinic was too. So people came there. We did healings all the time, or energy work, and we did circle, we did fire ceremonies, we did drum circles, we did all sorts of stuff, and we built a pillar of light. And people could, if you couldn't see it, you could feel it. And it was about 15 minutes away from my house, the circle of that light. When my clients would drive, they'd get to a certain point. So this is how I know things. I don't make this up. They tell me. And I'll say, I was driving along, and then I could feel it, and I and whatever was happening for them, and I would be like, oh, that's interesting. The next person would tell me, and they'd say, where is it that you're feeling it? So I could get a radius of where that pillar was, and they were all saying roughly the same area. And I was like, so the pillar of light radiated out, and as they were driving, it was a certain point where they would feel the expansion of that field, that they're coming into the pillar of light. The pillar of light wasn't me. The pillar of light is what, as a gatekeeper, you build, right? And so now, well, Eric's been here in Hawaii for 25 years or something, so he's built his pillar, and I have mine. But now we're building. We're having to redo that. Why did I tell you that? It's about what your potential is, what's possible, right? I haven't told these stories for a long time, for years. I might have touched on bits and pieces, but I really haven't. My stories have been coming out full on the last probably 2 weeks. I'm like, all right, so it must be time to storytell. And then I got, okay, you need to write these stories, right? You need to get a book. And I'm like, I don't need a book. I don't need to write. I don't know why. Maybe it's just for the manuals to go with the videos. I don't know. But I'm just listening and doing it. So the paintings, whether you do them at home, whether you do this program, whether you do little bits and pieces, know that, when you're conscious, you're building the energy, right? One more thing. I still have, you can go and look it up on Facebook if you want. It's called PH It. Fit. PH It. Do you remember that, Rebel? Were you in that? It was before we met. So it was it was research. I'm always doing research. I'm a nerd at heart, but it's all like spiritual sort of healing and wellness research. I'm studying the human, and often I have to just study myself because, um, it's unethical to do some of the things on other people apparently. So I just do it on myself. But now and then I'll come up with something. So this PH-IT or FIT. So look it up. And you can ask to join. And basically all it is taking your pH. So many moons ago, I had all like how my body works, all my sort of abilities, whatever you want to call them, tested by two different scientists. And so I had one tested 13. So anyway, part of that test was the ability to shift the pH in water. Now, I mean, most people know that, I think. Maybe I shouldn't assume, but that you can change the pH of water, right? Just with your intention. So we knew that. But then we started to do what I call ratcheting to make that water. So just say I've got my water here and I test it with the pH kit, right? PH-IT to keep fit. I thought it was clever. Anyway, it's a bit daggy. And what the pH level, so is it alkaline or acidic? So if the pH is good, so you've done your first protocol and you've got the pH to around 6, 7. And then the next one is shift it. And you choose what you're going to shift it to. So make it more acid or more alkaline. And then you shift the water. So if you go onto that, it's free Facebook. It's our little thing. But COVID came in and ruined it all. So I got enough. So there's the little, I'm pretty sure you'll find the methodology there, like how to do each one if you wanted to do it yourself. But let me tell you the key to it. So this was COVID was coming in, or whatever you want to call it. All that stuff was coming in. And one of my clients, my one-to-one clients, my mentor clients, is a doctor. And he was, or is, a, what do you call it? In the UK, they call it something different. It's like a ICU or doctor, so he's working, well, first of all, he was working with people who were in coma, and he was asking me how to help them energetically while they were in coma. And so I started to just teach him. I mean, that I was excited that someone in the medical professional wanted to help, like really help people who were, in coma, or they're coming out of, or they've had brain surgery and that sort of stuff, because that's my background. I used to work on the neurological ward, and I was also worked in a acquired brain injury clinic. So I saw them from when they had their neurosurgery, brain surgery. I would visit them in the hospital, right? Make sure they had everything. I'd even go to their homes, visit with their families, do all that. That was all part of my job, the community part as well, to make sure they're safe to go home, all that. But then in the ABI clinic, I followed them after they went home. And so that was interesting to me, like how they care and what they need, all that, blah, blah, blah. So we became friends, and we're still friends today, but I taught him energetics and whatnot. So when this sort of something, whatever we want to call it, we might call it COVID now, but when that started coming in, we didn't really know what it was. And he was seeing all that because he's a doctor, right? And then we started to look at health and wellness and how we could work with that. So we did a lot of research, sort of all hush-hush. Actually, Thornton Streeter was a little bit in there too with the biofield viewer, because we were looking at no one wanted to really be part of it, though. It's like, who do you know that has COVID that we could screen their energy? And it was very hard to get anybody because I was so scared. Do you know what I mean? But what we were looking at is what was the energetics doing? You know, what we could see, could we scan the energy, what we could see, so that we could look at different ways of working with the health and wellness of people who had that in the different strains and whatnot. So that's how PHE came about. Because, are you all right with another story? Like, we're going to finish, honestly. All right, one more story. Well, maybe two. So when I was in university doing contemporary art, my art was always science, subtle energy based. But I didn't know all I know now. And I got offered, like, I did a proposal to look at touch with a what do you call it? A university that crosses arts and science. So they call it the soft science, or wet science, sorry, but like biology, stuff like that. And my proposal was this, and it got accepted. I just never did it. Other reasons. I was interested because I work with traumatized little humans and big humans, and I also understood touch, attachment, and attunement because I was, trauma therapy. I was sort of going into that. Then I was a social worker. I worked with the most vulnerable humans, right? And I was looking at why they did what they did, why the behavior was how it was, and all of those sorts of things. And often it was teenage boys and girls, and Indigenous families, all of that. And I started to look at the history, anthropology, right? History of Australia, Indigenous population, blah, 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 how that impacts, and it's still going on today. And around touch and how we're touched, right? So that's the gist of it, touch. Like, it will blow your mind what I know about the skin, but touch. So, and how that relates to the nervous system and then our behavior. So we know that, there's a lot of research on Romanian orphans. So I went to Romania and I went to orphanages that weren't really orphanages. They had families, but due to disabilities or whatnot, they were blind, deaf, or had other challenging medical things going on that the gypsies, the gypsy community, which are ostracized in Romania, like the Indigenous in Australia. So I did this talk on how I could see the similarities and how they were treated and blah, 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 right? To help in their care and their welfare and their understanding of the parents and how the parents were parenting and all that sort of stuff, rather than ostracizing them and pushing them to the margins so they're not getting their needs met. So these kids, but in their original studies, these babies that were in the orphanages, the ones at the end, so I'll just tell you about one study, the children at the end were doing better than the children. They were in lines in these cribs, or bassinets, whatever you want to call them, cots, cribs. And the ones at the ends were doing better than the rest of them, and they couldn't work out why. And then they realized that, the cleaner was coming in, in one of them, and she was picking up the baby. You know what I mean? They were being touched, they were being hugged. So all this, you could just Google it. There's so much on it now, but attachment and attunement, right? How you're held in the field of your primary caregiver, and how the brain develops from that touch, right? So trauma, being taken away from your primary caregiver, no matter what the circumstances are, is trauma for that child's little brain. It doesn't matter whether it's the mom or the dad or whatever. And so that was my job, like all of that, like having parents come to me and say their child has this like they're playing up or they have this behavior. And I straight away know, like, there's a handful of things that if there was no direct trauma to the child, physical or sexual, right, that they knew of, it would be the mum was ill, right, directly after, the baby was premature, or like there was a health issue with the primary caregivers, and so the child might have lived with grandma or auntie, or they were removed from the primary caregiver in some way. And it's not necessarily trauma, like something bad happened, but just the removal of, so the attachment, the bonding of the primary caregiver wasn't there, right? So that creates different connections, the nervous system response, the fear responses, how the brain wires and fires together, all of that. So why are we the way we are? Why do we act the way we act? Because there's a fear that's triggered, our nervous system goes, right? So the orphanages, the attachment attunement. So this research that I was going to do was to show a different way that you can, there's a particular touch that when you're touched with that firmness, shifts the blood for the human. Now that research was done on rats, but it was unethical to do on humans, so they say. So I said, I would like to do it on myself. I will be the rat, and we'll do this research on myself. And they agreed that, like, I was able to do it. And that came from me knowing that what we eat shifts our blood. It's all out there too now, but this back in the day, when we eat something, so you take a sample of your blood, look at it under my microscope, then eat an egg, right? And then look at it under most, right? Completely shifts. Like what you put into your body, what you consume, what you digest in your environment, or digest, into your body, shifts you. So what does touch do? I was fascinated by it, right? Because when we touch the body, it shifts our energetics too. Calms the nervous system, calms the energetic nervous system. So what's going on? So there's three forms of touch that I was looking at: firm, hard, and soft. The hard and soft were the same in the center. Do you see what I mean? It's like when you're, or maybe you don't, I'll tell you, just assuming. So when I'm working with children and I get children that have really have their mum and dad and they have everything they could possibly want, but they have the behaviors of a traumatized child, what's going on? And we call it helicopter parenting nowadays, right? Have you heard of helicopter or over-parenting or cotton wool parenting? You hover over and you don't allow them to expand and take challenges and whatnot. And what I was seeing was it was the same behavior as a neglected child. It's the two extremes. So in social work, in the programs that I worked in, we called it good enough parenting. Good enough parenting, because the two extremes, just like the touch, were harmful in the brain development, in our nervous system development, in how we can regulate and how we act or react, So anyway, I'm fascinated by this stuff because it it links to our fear and love and all the rest of it. But so I'll leave that at that. But so this is how we got to the fit. So I'm coming around to close that off. So me and my friend, we were looking at that and we were doing our own. And then we went from water, changing the water, just changing it normally. So you build up. And I'd get you to do it at least 3 times, 3 to 5 times, and give me the results, like photograph the little strips, tell me what it was. Like there was a certain methodology there. Then they were doing ratcheting it up or down, make it more alkaline or acidic, right? Right? And then they would do it so many times. What I was doing was building it up to show them that they could do it. Then they would do it with saliva. Same thing, just changing the saliva and then ratcheting it up or down, right? Doing that, so many times to get, enough data to be able to present it as a finding, right? And then we're going to go on to the blood. We didn't get there because of COVID, but that group's still there. It's dormant at the moment, but I was thinking about starting it back up because it's still key to our health and wellness. You knowing that you can change and shift your state, right? If you can change the state of water in a glass without having it near your face, that you're breathing on it or anything, just having it in, you don't even, you could just have it on the table. We did it all sorts of ways. You could just hold it, or you could put it on the table and hold it, or you could just look at it, right? And there's different ways of doing it. There was only one person out of that whole group that couldn't do it at the start. And so I talked to her about what she was doing, and I just tweaked it. She didn't understand. Ultimately, I'll tell you the trick. You got to love it. You got to love the water. And it sometimes takes people a little time to go, what does that mean? So I have to sort of mentor you to be able to love something that's not a person, right? Like really love it, not just, you know what I'm saying? Like, being gratitude to the water. Like you do your food. So we do that, over our food, every day, numerous times a day. Why? Because it's the same thing. But what if you did that to your body, or the water in your body? Oh, what if you did that to the blood? What if you did that to your skin? Remember Mercedes? Do you still like how you smell? Yes, good. Right? It's all part of it. Actually, the other part of it is that you can do that across the room, right, across the Zoom. If there's other people there, you can go, oh, what does Cynthia smell like? Do I like her smell? Or whoever else is there, anyway, you don't want to do that to people that don't want you sniffing them, but you see that everything I'm teaching is showing you your potential. It's not that I'm like this magical unicorn or something. That's what everything that I do is here. I'm here to show you human potential to the degree that I have access to. There's people that can do all sorts of other things, but this is what I know, right? What I'm sort of seeing where the extension of it is. So anyway, if you want to go look at that, because I'm thinking if people are interested, that could be cool, because I do have in Perth, I have all the electronic sort of gadgets to test the pH, but I did bring a small packet, but you can get them all over the place, pretty low key, There's different ones, but as long as you're consistent, and I'm pretty sure in that group the methodology's there somewhere, and if it's not, just send me a message and I'll find it, and you can just do it for your own sake. We were doing it all together, but I am thinking about doing that again, because if you can just change the water that you drink, if it's polluted, or if it's, you know what I mean, like not polluted that it'll make you see, how can you neutralize? There we go, Rebel, bringing it back around, neutralizing. You just gotta love. Donna Eden taught me that with hot fudge sundae. She said, if I just love that hot fudge sundae, if you go, oh, it's going to make me fat, or my glucose, or my whatever, my teeth, or my, right? There you go. We'll see how you go, Mercedes, if you've got some strips. I've got some here. But yeah, I am thinking about, like, well, when I say thinking, it's like I'm listening, and some of this stuff's coming back around, which is really interesting. The subliminal stress has come back around, the pH stuff's come back around, the biofield view has come back around. It's not necessarily the area that I want to focus, but I listen, and if I'm shown that's what I got to bring back around and do the next level of, then I will. And particularly because that doctor that I told you about, who put the screenings. So a lot of you are going through stuff, and you've got, I heard again yesterday another lady went for an MRI, and nothing showed. They can't find anything wrong with her, which is awesome. So do you continue or do you not? Do you, like, what do you know? I can't tell somebody what to do in those situations. If they're working with me or if they're in my community, then, I could sort of, but you know what I'm getting at? It's like, I'm trying not to say it, but it's like, do you continually go and get cut up and chopped up and, like, where's the invasive screening? The non-invasive screening, I mean. The non-invasive screening. And then maybe it's all changing. But anyway, all right. Did I finish all those stories? So it came back around to blood, touch, how that impacts you, your brain development, your health and wellness, how we can shift and neutralize our field, and bringing in the love or gratitude and devotion even to what we eat or our water or our body, and how that is a healing force, right? So showing you through changing water and then changing saliva, right? I guess you could do it with urine as well. I haven't done that, but that's another, I mean, I guess you could do it that way. If you've got diabetes comes up a lot because, a lot of energy medicine assists that. It's not that we work on it, it's just that people come with health problems. They do particular energetics, and their other stuff clears up, right? So it's about getting the system functioning and strong. It's not going, oh, you've got this or that or this or that, and focusing on all that. It's like getting it, the environment healthy and strong, so that whatever is in the environment has a harder time reproducing, or like being a whatever you call it, a parasite, right? All right, Rebel, it's time for bed, right? Although it looks still like light time there. Yeah. Oh, because we're in morning. In the afternoons, it's usually bedtime when you're on, huh? On Thursdays. Yeah. All right. So bring your people to mind, or yourself, but you'll be part of it anyway. And just feel where you are. Feel the quickening. Can you feel the quickening? I don't know if you're feeling the quickening, or it's like that fast energy. It's neither good or bad. For me, it's an indication of going into higher hertz, into gamma. Sometimes when your eyes flicker, if you look up, under your eyelid you look up, or you look up to the right, you sort of get a little turbocharge. It's sort of shifting into higher alpha. When it's really pumping, it's in gamma. Breathe. And connecting our circle. Oh, interesting. I see fire. I see a lot of fire. Father. The Great Mother and the Great Father. And the Great Father's here. The Beloved. Bringing to mind those that you may want to invite to drink from the cup, the chalice, the grace. As you bring them to mind, bring them in with gratitude, bring them in with love, bring them in with no other expectation, no other want or need. If you're feeling fear around what's happening for them or yourself, breathe. See if you can sit in the love. If it's not your love, sit in the field of the love of the circle. Just be open in gratitude to the circle's love. Purity of unconditional love. No expectation, with no yearning, no wanting, no need. Just is. The neutralizing field of purity of love, grace. Just float in that love and mercy, as if you're in the calm sea, a warm, calm ocean, floating and receiving in the purity of love, the gratitude, thankful. Even if you don't know what you're thankful for, bring that. Be thankful for the connection. Be thankful that you woke up this morning. Be thankful for the indications of the information, the data that's coming in. It may feel difficult. It may feel wonderful. They're either end of the spectrum. No attachment. It is, just is. Breathe. accept and receive what you're able to today. If you have fear around the receiving, meaning if you have a physical sensation, just acknowledge it. Let it know it's okay, you're okay with it, it just is, just is, just is. Move into your gratitude that you're able to be this receptor of the purity of love, purity of unconditional love. And receive as you're touched by the hand, you're graced. We're thankful, we're grateful for what we received today. That it just is. What we need. What we want. But ultimately, what is to be beyond the little human. Acknowledging the beloved, holy wisdom, allowing that love to rest within you, allowing the touch to permeate all aspects of self. To move through the fears of fear, move through the fears of love, so that you can become and live into your full potential, whatever that is to be on this earth at this time. Take a breath. Receive it. Start to move back from the center. Start to make connection with your physical, where you're sitting, where your feet are, where your bottom is, where your back is. My voice, the sounds around you. Just have some gratitude for where you are in this moment. And practice, just practice seeing that within the love there is fear, and within the fear there is love. Practice that next step. The paradox, being able to see it all, within it all. So when you look at yourself and you feel something other than pure love, know that it's there too, and vice versa. You are all of it. You are all of it and you're none of it. You just are. Knowing that all who have been placed in the center, their essence, has been invited to receive the grace, the purity of love. And may they continue to ripple through that ocean of love and mercy until may they be able to come back and drink, touch into the center of this ocean, this container, this vessel, when they need. And we start to close the circle now, knowing that all that needed to be done is done, and that we've received, we acknowledge we have received, and we give thanks. And if we so are inclined that we choose to continue connecting with the emanator, with the creator, with the beloved, with Holy Wisdom, Holy Spirit, great mystery, in every breath, we're never disconnected. You can choose. You can choose to a point, but that's another story, maybe for Thursday. Breathe yourself back. Open your eyes if you've still got your eyes closed. Notice how you feel, notice how you are. Are you neutral? Are you neutralizing? You feel like you're in the center of the center. Almost no thing, almost no thing, almost no thing. Then your job here is done also. And you can carry that frequency, that neutralizing way into your evening, your day, your dreams. And until we meet again, see you on Thursday. And so interesting. I was like, oh, I'm tired, so I'll just do like a real quick circle in grace. I don't know what happened. I was taken over by the force. May the force be with you. All right, much love. May the blessings be. See you on Thursday, if not before.